I can begin. Namaste, good morning to you. I want to welcome you to this third meditation class. And I want to begin by expressing gratitude to the Recovery Cafe for making the space available to us, to you, and for the staff who also makes it possible for this to happen at all. I also want to express gratitude to the lineage which I teach from, because without the countless beings who have carried this practice forward, in some cases for a couple thousand years, this could never happen. So it's very important to be present to the reality of that lineage connection. And for those of you who would like to make a donation to the cafe for these practices, you can go to the webpage, and under the donation information you can make a donation there, and I certainly encourage you to do that. That's a good thing. As we begin our practice, I want you to settle into, in this case, the form that you find yourself in. We're beginning on a chair, for those who want to be on a chair. Later on, I'm going to sit down on the floor because that's where I do my meditation practice. We begin with our body awareness. And so that means you're making your mind go to the sensations of your body as you find yourself in this place now, your feet. The form that you're sitting on, in the chair. If you have a blanket under your hips, if you have a blanket under your feet, if your back is resting on the back of the chair, being present to that. When working with a chair, it's important to think about the reality of a chair. If a chair is too high and your lower legs are hanging off of it and not by touching the floor, you want to do something to modify that, to put something under your feet so that the feet are supported and not hanging. If the chair is too low and the knees are high, then the backs and the thighs are not on the chair, and you kind of tend to rock back and lose your integrity of your form. And in that case, you put something into your hips to lift them up. And you can see that I have done this on the chair. Spending a few moments on that experience. Now, when you come to your awareness of your form here and now, this is the place that we find ourselves in. That's an important principle that we often overlook. Each one of us has a place that we find ourselves in. Being present to that place, if it's a room, if it's under a tree, if it's in a park, allow that fullness of that awareness to be included. Not only what am I feeling with my feet, my body, what I'm seeing in front of me, what is behind me, the whole circumference of my world in this place. That is part of body awareness. Now, because I'm going to be sitting in this meditation practice, I'm going to set up on the floor, so I'm going to move the chair. And we begin with the same questions. Here I am sitting on the floor, my ankles are on the mat, and I've got a little elevation on the back of my hips so that I can feel a little more comfortable, letting the hips kind of rotate forward so I can bring the chest back. And have my skeleton support my shoulders and my head. My legs are crossed at my ankles. Another way to sit in meditation is where the legs come out in front and the backs of the lower legs are resting on the floor. Another very acceptable way. Now, acceptable means this is a steady form for the body to come into. Now, if when you try to sit and your knees are high like this, you want to notice what happens to your back. You kind of collapse. You want the knees to be able to drop down. So the thighs are approximately parallel to the floor, and you can rock forward and backward and feel your pelvis moving with that rocking. Pelvis rocking forward, coming onto the fronts of your sitting bones, rocking back, feeling the back of the sitting bones. And then finding the center of awareness from the top of your head, through your neck, through your heart, down to where your hips are touching whatever they're touching. Body awareness. You want to be comfortable in this form. That's important. If it isn't comfortable, it will not be easy. If it is not easy, over time you will begin to move to make adjustments to make the posture more comfortable. Those movements create distraction from your awareness. So you may want to take a few moments to be present to your form. Do you like it? Can you be here for about 20 minutes? And making any adjustments in that form if you would like to. The second part of this awareness as we prepare is a movement of the breath. Breath is life for us, obviously. But one thing in yoga that we add to that is the awareness of the movement of the breath in the body. That awareness allows us to go more and more deeply into the sensations of the body and the very thoughts that I carry around in my brain, in my mind. We call that prana. So prana includes not just the life-giving aspect of the breath, but the awareness that comes with it when we use it as a method or as a tool in practice. When the breath comes in, I can feel that. The sense of the movement of the breath coming into the body. Now, how do you feel that? Is it something about the expansion of the rib cage? Is it something different than that? You feel the way the breath flows in through the nose, perhaps. Just some sense of who is feeling this. And then, now what attitude do you have with that perception? Who's here now? The person who's here now is not the same person in awareness that you woke up to this morning. That state of being that you experience now as you begin to practice is not the same. That's why I ask, who's here in this practice? The breath that comes in and the breath that goes out are two different aspects of the same thing. One cannot be without the other. So even though we experience the duality, it is a single perception with two different aspects. At some point they become the same, at some point they separate. Be aware of that flow of awareness from this and that to oneness is part of the practice. The third aspect of it is the mental one. Using my mind to be aware of this moment. Conceptualizing, to add my mind as an ally to deepen my practice. So when I ask, who's here now? It really is a mental formation question. Who's here now? What kind of thoughts are going through your mind? A thought is mental? What kind of conceptions do you have? Or is there stillness? Being aware of that. We're going to be using the same preparatory practice in this class as we have in the previous two, and we will for the rest of this meditation practice sequence. The subject of this meditation is developing a sense of self. Not as, where was I born? What time was I born? How old am I? Not that sense of self, but the perception of myself that is not cognitive. Developing a sense of self is not based upon something that can be written down or described. The practice that we use, the method that we use, is from the Anapati Sutta. It has two basic practices that are divided each into two more practices. We begin with noticing the direction of the breath as it comes in to the body, and the awareness of the breath as it goes out, the direction of the breath as it goes out. It may take a few moments for you to kind of get that sensation going in your perception and giving it a word. What direction would you use to describe the way the breath comes into the body and the way the breath goes out? Does it go out? In? Is that it? Does it go up? Does it go down? Does it go around? Just giving a word to the way you would experience and describe the way the breath comes in and the way the breath goes out. You're not trying to control the breath. You're watching the breath. And you're giving it a word to describe the direction of the breath. At the same moment, you perhaps are becoming aware that the perception of the breath that you are now knowing is not the same as when you began. You may have begun to notice that some breaths take a longer time to move into and out of the body. Some breaths are very short. And maybe you're beginning to notice some things about your body that affect your ability to breathe as the posture now begins to assert itself in your awareness. You don't want to ignore that. You want to be present to that, to see the effect that form has upon your practice. And what would you call that new awareness? Maybe it is simply uncomfortable. Some breaths are longer and some are shorter. Duration is not the same. But I have this itch in my shoulder or something like that that you bring to it. So that's part of your practice, you know. You want to bring that to it, but you still want to keep the body steady and comfortable and easy. Now, as we go to the second part of the meditation practice, the focus is more on training your awareness to the way you perceive the breath moving in your body and out of your body. Just noticing the sensation of it, the way the breath feels, forgetting the description, the word to describe it. What is the body doing that sends you a message that is a sensory message about the way the breath is moving in the body? Just being aware of that. Where do you feel that in your body? Not by giving it a name, but by, okay, this is where it is. And letting that awareness deepen as you begin to focus on your breath going out, your exhalation. Notice when the exhalation arises. When does it begin? And giving that beginning some special attention. Every time you begin to exhale, give that beginning a special focus to see the newness of that exhalation. And now begin to kind of follow the way, the perception of exhalation flows into your awareness until it dissolves and ceases to be. Release, let the breath flow in, coming back to refreshing your awareness of this new exhalation. And following the gradual, more subtle perception of the disappearance of that breath. Right there at that moment when there's nothing left, kind of pause, relax, let the body alone, and let the breath flow in. In this practice, you become more and more aware of that which perceives the way the breath dissolves. At that moment when there's no more movement of the breath, there you are. You want to begin to look more and more carefully at that final dissolving and disappearing of the breath. And then noticing the arising of the inhalation. Spending a few moments looking at that. As you become more and more present to that space, that place where there is nothing but awareness, as you exhale again, open the eyes and gaze at something in front of you. Just seeing what it is and letting that image be more present to your awareness as the exhalation dissolves. And staying for a moment, gazing at that, whatever it is, with the eyes open, and closing them as you inhale and pulling that image back into your awareness. It won't last forever, but at some point you'll be back in that stillness with no recollection of what you were gazing at. So you're studying this process of being aware of something that I see as I exhale with my eyes open, closing my eyes, and pulling that awareness back in until it dissolves. And there I am again. It's another way to investigate a sense of self that is perceptual, non-cognitive, no thoughts, not about where you were born or your family. And looking again and again and again and again at that. Allowing repetition to deepen your skill and your interest in this practice. And then adding this to that perception. When I open my eyes and gaze, I'm looking at an object that is outside of me. When I close my eyes and I bring that object back in, it dissolves and I'm back into that which perceives the object, the subject. Investigating object, external, subject, internal. To get a clear sense of that is the thing which is outside of me that I'm seeing that is not me. It's an object. As I close my eyes, breath comes back in, I am back to subject. This relationship between the world outside that I see, that is not me, and the world that I come back into that I call me, is the subject of this meditation. Now we're gazing at objects that are neutral, but we're thinking about the times in our lives when what we see outside is not at all neutral. We like it or we don't like it, or it's terrifying or it's wonderful. And allowing that practice to let that pulling back in of the object that is outside, that is not neutral, dissolve back into the awareness of the self that is free from pleasantness, unpleasantness, that quality, and the external world, especially those things that disturb us, I can come back to being okay with this. I want to be able to see how this process works. When I come back to that initial source of awareness subject, that is always neutral, always present, always free of disturbance, of delight, of confusion, of anger, of fear. Now I'd like you to just kind of allow your breath to return to its normal pattern and spend a few moments being present to letting your mind go back to this practice and kind of see what pops into your first question, what happened in these 20 minutes. And then we'll take a few moments of rest. Now for me, to stay seated is very comfortable. And so I'll stay here for my Shavasana. If you're on the floor, you may want to lay down and rest completely in your Shavasana. If you're sitting, you may want to just stay in your chair or move the chair and come down into your Shavasana. As you settle into Shavasana, for just a moment, let your mind move around the way the body is making contact with the mat. If your legs are on the chair, with the legs on the chair. Kind of tuck the chin and lengthen the back of the neck to make the spine nice and long. And pull the shoulder blades together and down. Allow the palms to be open. And let the body become still. Shavasana is the Sanskrit word for corpse. There are many ways to use this relationship between that word and the body being still as it is now. One of them is to reflect upon that moment that we will all experience when this body will not get up again. When there will be the end of this body for us. Or to let the mind wander and be mindful of that movement of the mind. And not disturbing the flow by objecting to this thought, by adding something to it, by saying yes to calmness and no to everything else. So that I can keep relaxing and relaxing, letting go, letting those spots of normal accumulation of tiredness dissolve. And now begin to make some very small movements. And then enlarge them. Maybe just making a finger flex and then extend. Or pointing a toe, or internally rotating the feet, letting the thighs move in the hips. Just something now to come back to an awareness of your body. And then when you're ready, going ahead and bringing your knees up to your chest and wrapping your arms around them, kind of rocking from side to side as you prepare to sit up. If you were in a chair, readjusting your form so that you can come forward with your skeleton supporting your shoulders, thighs and sitting bones on the seat of your chair, feet on the floor. If you are on the floor, go ahead and come on up to sitting and bring the palms of your hands toward one another, either touching softly. You feel your fingers and palms and thumbs touching, or keeping space between them with an awareness of the sensation that each hand feels as if almost touching. I'm going to do 3 ohms, and join me if you would like to do that. Let the body be soft. Push the sitting bones down. Tuck the chin to open the back of the neck and inhale, taking the breath in. Thank you very much.
Namaste.
I think that's about 20